Billy and I are very excited to share with you some amazing insights that we gathered last year and early this year from a roundtable for a customer revolution that we did with a lot of C-level executives. Many of you told us back in November that you wanted to have the CustomerX community help uncover more of what the C-level executives want from customer marketing and customer advocacy and people running customer programs. And so that roundtable was a perfect venue for doing that. You're going to hear a lot about how that happened today. Let me first introduce myself. This is Jeff Ernst. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SlapFive, as well as co-founder of the CustomerX Pros Network, along with Howard Fields, who is on the call as well. Welcome, Howard. And I've been doing customer marketing since before it had a name, probably 30 years or so. So it's my passion, not only working for vendors doing customer marketing and all forms of customer engagement, but also doing a stint at Forrester, where I was the lead analyst covering customer engagement and advising B2B CMOs and CXOs and CCOs on how they can elevate their game and be more strategic with their customer programs. And then let me also introduce Bill. When I first reached out to Bill, probably 4 or 5 years ago, because he is the thought leader in the customer engagement space, and he was really the only one out there talking about how customers are really the most powerful resource that companies have to drive the growth of their business. And I believe that too. And so I knew we had to join forces, and we've been collaborating ever since. And not only that, but Bill's also a prolific writer. His book, The Hidden Wealth of Customers, was published by Harvard Business Review, and I think at least 20 other articles. And then Bill's done a lot of guidance, advisory, and consulting work with the who's who name of companies out there, and especially in the tech industry, companies like Slack, Zendesk, Workday, AWS, LinkedIn, just really advising them on how to be more strategic and how to mobilize customers to really drive growth. And then also pleased to have Carol Meyers joining us as a special guest. She was one of the members of our customer revolution, and we're going to ask her to share some insights in a few minutes as well from her, some of her key takeaways from that experience, as well as take questions from you on how you can start to elevate your game and start to talk the language and build those executive level relationships that are critically required to do what you're going to hear us talking about here. So Bill, if we could go to the next slide, let's just, one thing we're going to do, so we're going to be sharing with you a lot of these insights, but we also want to make sure we're teeing this up front because we want to get your feedback on this call as well, is how can we help you do more because we're going to tell you what you need to do today, but you're going to want some help. And so we just want to gather some input from you. Would you like to see, workshops that you could attend that get into this, either multi-company workshops or single company workshops with your executives to help walk through the process of doing more of what the C-level wants, maybe executive or one-on-one coaching or group coaching, or just more sessions like this where we bring seasoned executives like Carol onto the webinars to share their insights about how they want to see these programs be carried out and advanced in their companies. So next, let me just quickly run through the agenda, take 5 seconds to do that. So we're going to talk about the key takeaways from the roundtable for Customer Revolution. And not surprisingly, one of those key takeaways is going to be turning into a mandate for customer marketing, which is really to focus and align your work with the C-level growth objectives of the company. And we're going to walk through what those are. And then we're going to give you a bunch of examples of strategic growth initiatives that your C-level executives care about and how customer marketers have taken that next leap and started to join those initiatives and proactively be bringing customer program ideas to the executives and how they can support those. Then we're going to have a free-form discussion about how to get started and take any questions you have as well for the panel here. Okay, so with that, let me reintroduce Bill. And Bill, why don't you take it away and give us a little bit of a background on what the roundtable was all about, how it came to be, and some of the key takeaways.
All righty, thank you, Jeff. And thanks everybody. It's great to have you all here. It looks like an exciting group that we're attracting here, so that's awesome. Jeff gave a pretty good background. I'll share a little story about forming this roundtable. When we first started to address this issue of how can you get more support from CXOs, and we started to call this roundtable, or actually I did. This is kind of on me. I called it Roundtable for customer engagement. And the response that I got was crickets. It's like, oh, we're really busy right now. Sounds interesting. Send me the recording or send me the transcript, blah, blah, blah. Stuff like this. And then I sat and really thought seriously with Jeff, what are we really doing here? And what we're doing, if we really are just totally bold about this, we're fomenting a revolution. We think it's time, and the time is right. So I called it Roundtable for a Customer Revolution. It filled right up. We wanted a relatively small group, about 10 people. We got them just like that. So that's a sense of what it is and the appetite for change that certainly these progressive CXOs have. And you can see the group here, including Nick Mehta, CEO of Gainsight, Carol, Jake Sorofman, former CMO of Pendo, former Chief Research Officer at Gartner, Jill Rowley, a legend in social media and customer relationships in Silicon Valley, and so forth. Howard Fields, I'm delighted he's here today as well. And we had some great discussions, a total of probably 9 hours total. The full group, along with side discussions, one-on-one, or smaller groups of us, total of 9 hours of discussions of this. That's how much they value this topic. And without further ado, let's jump right into the takeaway. Let's jump in right into the main takeaway. Let's not mess around. And the main takeaway is this: CXOs are open to the idea that your customers are your best growth resource. Most companies aren't realizing the potential of that resource, and they're wide open to ideas for doing so. And after about 3 meetings, Jake Sorofman, our Gartner guy, he drew this up on a piece of paper, scanned it, and sent it over to me, which I then shared with the group. And I'll give you like the cleaned up version so we can actually read it. And this is his take, not my take, not Jeff's take. It's Jake's, this CXO, this talented CXO. It's his take on the vision for these customers, the customers that you work with. Make customers our best resource for ideas and innovation, customer to company. Best resource for marketing and sales, customer to market. Best resource for customer experience and customer outcomes, customer to customer. And notice, he doesn't say they're important. Most CXOs know that customer references and advocates and MVPs and so forth, they know that they're important, but they don't think of them as critical generally. And this is making the statement they are critical. They're the best resource for achieving these outcomes. So what accounts for that response? And the reason they got really on board with this was because they perceived us as solving a major problem for them. And rather than trying to convince them that they had to do these things with these customers and look at the great things they do, we first started by just having open-ended discussions about the customer relationship in general and how they look at it. And they shared all kinds of problems with it. And that's where the opening comes. So the way to see this is to start with this is their day job. This is their job. This is what they're paid to do. They're paid to achieve major business objectives like this, and probably one or two or several of these, I would guess, are on 90% of the companies that you all are representing today, are on your C-suite's top priority list. So, and then here's the tools for meeting these objectives. And you've got your powerful, big budgeted silos like marketing and sales, pre-sale, of course, marketing post-sale as well, services, support, product innovation, and so forth. These are the big guns that are supposed to be being tools for the CXOs to solve and meet those objectives. And we spent probably parts of 3 meetings talking about the dysfunctions and the challenges that this arrangement creates. And I'll just share one with you. This could be a whole topic itself. This could be a long article, but I'll share one with you. There was kind of a consensus around the idea that there's a certain insanity in the way we run our businesses. You know, as we got more comfortable together and really talked frankly, it's a certain insanity in the way we're running our businesses. It's kind of like this ruse we're running. And what they meant was a way to, an easy way to see this. Customers want 2 things from us. They want empathy, and they want to be able to trust us. They want empathy and trust. That's table stakes. That's what they want. And yet we deliver marketing that that spends all, you know, that can tend to do that. We've got salespeople that are driven by quotas. We've got support people driven by protecting margins, keeping the cost of that low, closing tickets, and so forth. And these sorts of things erode trust. They create friction in what we're trying to accomplish, and more importantly, in what customers are trying to accomplish. And what does that do? That drives up the expense of meeting these objectives, and it drives down their effectiveness. And it's a little bit like grocery shopping these days, right? It used to be, you know, we got a pretty good deal on food on our groceries. And lately, when we go to the grocery store, I'm a walnuts guy, and I noticed this. This is one of the first things I noticed. The walnuts were coming in much smaller packages with a higher price, right? Decreasing value and increasing cost. That's what CXO are perceiving, and they're open. That's what they're perceiving in the way they're addressing those challenges and those objectives, and they're open to solutions to this. So, by the way, here's a cleaned up version. Back to our cleaned up version. Wait, did I show this?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get back to this. So they really opened up, like I said, about these problems they're having with. Let's wait on this one. Sorry, folks. So that's the problem, sketched out in rather stark detail. So what's the solution here? Let's start getting over into solutions. Everybody knows, certainly these CXOs know, that everyone realizes that customers have to be a part of the solution for the most obvious of reasons. When customers interact with prospects who are considering, or with customers who are thinking about renewing, or perhaps in danger of not, or expanding their business, or newbies, or say struggling with adoption, when they engage with customers, magic happens. You know, they're peers. They don't have conflicting agendas. There's no insanity going on when you have those direct connections between customers. But customer programs tend to be subordinated to those silos that we just looked at. And the insanity can start creeping back in. We start getting things like happy talk, this is Jeff's phrase, which I think is great. Happy talk, you know, customer stories, reference burnout. You know, sometimes the notion comes in, we have to incentivize customers. We don't make this valuable enough for our customer advocates to engage in these kinds of relationships. We have to incentivize them to get them to do it. All these are signs of dysfunction that are working into these relationships. So the solution is to insert your customers directly into the customer experience, and to be open to doing this throughout the customer journey without being mediated or filtered by these powerful silos that can have conflicting agendas. So let's take another look at these objectives here, and let's look at how that lines up with what you guys are doing here. So this slide on the left is just a representative. It's a few examples of what your day job is, what you're being paid for, is to do these sorts of things. And what we're suggesting here is not that you stop doing these, but rather that you start working with your C-suite to start changing the emphasis. Instead of prioritizing the agendas and the objectives of the silos like marketing and sales and so forth, your top priority and these activities need to be directed at these objectives that your CXO has. And there's no argument against this. It's what customers want. And these objectives over here, they take priority. I mean, you're seeing these. I know with your OKRs, you're seeing this in your own. Some of you are seeing this in your own, budgets and so forth, and your plans for upcoming quarters and upcoming years and so forth. You're seeing this. But what we're going to show you some examples of this that are far more powerful than we ordinarily see, even under that situation, with customer impacts. So that's the solution that we are, the vision, and it needs to be fleshed out. But that's the vision for what it is that your customers should be doing in your organizations. So Jeff and I are going to share a couple of examples to kind of drive home what we're talking about. And I'll start with one here. Acquisition. This should be, and some of you have seen these stories from me. I talk about these regularly because they should be iconic in your field. And certainly this one deserves to be in that status. Mark Benioff designed early Salesforce events to encourage candid conversations between customers and prospects. No sales pitch required. So Benioff, Mark Benioff, hired a sales executive, and he was explaining this. Mark was explaining this to the new executive, and the executive was dumbfounded. He said, "I don't understand. You're putting on these events. You're not having any demos. You're not having you're not having any business information from us. They're just talking. Customers and prospects just talking. What's the point of doing this if you don't pitch to them?" That's the kind of mentality that sometimes comes up, a lot of times comes up, not always, but a lot of times comes up, that needs to be battled. And then look particularly at the impact on this. This wasn't like, contributing videos or contributing, case studies or speeches at industry events and so forth as part of a marketing initiative or as part of a sales initiative that had influence on the outcome. This outcome was clear, and the driver was clear. It was just these conversations between customers and prospects. That's what we need to be seeing more of. That's where the opportunity is. And then Jeff, I think, Jeff,
yeah.
You there?
Yeah. Yep. If you go to the next one, or go back one.
Let's see.
Yeah, so I'll give an example too, and again, I just want to make the point that one of the key takeaways as well from the roundtable with the C-level executives is that they all recognize the power of the customers and the customer voice, and they want that customer voice infused into every fiber of their company. They just don't know how to do it, right? I mean, it's just, as Bill said, the silos get in the way, the lack of OKRs for knowing the customer get in the way, that there's all kinds of things. But I was lucky because I had the opportunity at Forrester. The first example is actually one of my examples. After being an analyst there for a couple of years, advising executives on how to elevate their customer programs, I was able to build the Forrester Frontlines, which was their first customer voice and engagement program. And so, but what we did is we made sure that we were supporting the most important growth initiatives that the board had. And one of them was, one of the top three was the fact that we were starting to lose wallet share at renewal time because our big accounts would renew at fewer number of seats because they weren't getting enough usage of the seats they had purchased. And so the board mandated that we try to stop the flow of losing seats and try to expand these seats at renewal time. And so the customer marketing folks actually took we mobilized our power users within these accounts to tell their own stories about the types of initiatives that they were doing with Forrester's help and package those up. And we had them now start to share them with their colleagues. And so, what perfect example of this is one big company that I can't mention their name in Redmond, Washington, software company. The champions that were making such great use of Forrester services started sharing their stories with all the other people in different product lines, different departments of the company. And we ended up tripling the size of the relationship with that company after 10 years of trying to grow it unsuccessfully by flying analysts out there to their headquarters to wine and dine them. So, across the board, it was between 100 and 200% seat expansion in each account, just by tapping into customers themselves to tell their stories to their peers, because they wanted to do it, because they were bragging about it, right? It gave them an opportunity to beat their chest about their successful initiatives. So it's definitely a win-win, all the way, win-win-win, I guess, three ways.
Awesome. Next one is from, well, I guess maybe another Redmond company here. It comes from them. This is, again, another iconic story. Microsoft diverted massively expensive support calls to its customer community. And check again the red letters, the impact, unmistakable. There's no question. And it was game changing. In this case, it was literally game changing to Microsoft's business model. And customer support using communities and engaging communities and customer support, that's old hat. That's old hat now. Everybody does this, but I haven't seen any that diverted close to what Microsoft's community did. And I'll share a little cautionary tale back to Salesforce, and I have inside information on this. I can share this. Can't name the person, but Salesforce's own community, as enlightened as they are about customer relationships, they couldn't get this kind of traction on diverting support requests to their community. And a major stumbling block was the firm's powerful customer support division. It was a silo, and obviously, and the reasons why is obvious. This sort of thing needs to be addressed. And then finally, before we introduce our special guest.
Yes, so let me also take, again, this relates to this. Another one of my key takeaways from the roundtable was that these C-level executives, they recognize that the customer marketing, customer engagement functions are broad and require intense cross-functional collaboration and cooperation. But one thing is, they don't know where to put you, right? So you'll notice that a lot of you are in companies where your group might get moved from marketing to customer success to sales, or wherever the biggest need is for some immediate Band-Aid on some problem. But this is also an opportunity for you folks to step up and start to, recommend where you should be put. But also, it doesn't really matter where your function lives if you take this mindset of, I'm going to connect my work to these strategic growth initiatives, and I'm going to be working cross-functionally to do that. So they're just as confused. They just don't know what to do with that function. So I thought that was a very interesting thing. And so just this last example here, I'm mentioning like an on-prem software company. There's 5 or 6 companies that I've worked with at SlapFive that fall into this exact boat. And this is a perfect situation that companies large and small, especially legacy companies that have an on-premise software product that they're now building a SaaS version, right? The board and the executives want to migrate your customers from the on-prem to the SaaS. Number one, so they don't lose them to another SaaS company that poaches them, but also because the beauty of SaaS is that wonderful recurring revenue. right? But customers oftentimes don't want to make that move because if it ain't broke, don't change my system, right? Or the SaaS versions never are as fully functional as the on-prem version. So there's always resistance. And so you, customer marketing, can play a huge role in helping smooth the road for getting customers to make that migration, because and a lot of the companies I've worked with, here's what they've done. They've really captured that voice in the stories of the customers who have taken that leap to really find out, like, the three big questions, like, why did you decide to take the leap, right? You must have saw something attractive, or there must have been some reason, because other customers that are nervous about it want to hear that. You know, what was the journey like going from point A to point B? And then how is life now better on the other side? And so this will overcome some of that great fear. And so across several software vendors that I've helped do this, we've seen at least 70% plus of those on-prem customers migrating to SaaS within the first year. And in many of those cases, they may have already spent a year trying to use their own coercion or arm twisting techniques or whatever it may be, and customers still resisted. But it wasn't until they heard why other customers took the leap and what that journey was like that they said, okay, I'm going to join them because there's safety in numbers. There's a saying out there, everybody likes to be first to be third, right? I mean, that nobody wants to do anything until they know others have done it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jeff. And now let's bring in the awesome Carol Meyers. Let me give her a proper introduction here. Carol is currently a venture partner at Glasswing Ventures, which is an early stage investor, and she serves on the boards of ZipWhip and Here.com. She has decades of experience as an executive in customer experience roles, including VP of Sales for Shiva Corporation, CMO at Unica, at LogMeIn, and most recently at Rapid7, where she did extraordinary work. She helped to grow this company tenfold from less than $30 million to nearly $400 million in revenue, a true unicorn, and really on its way to $1 billion in revenue, and also a successful exit as an IPO. So please welcome Carol. Let me stop sharing and get her on screen. And Carol, tell us, give us your perspective, please. Why don't you start by giving us your perspective on the roundtable and what it's, what's your high-level takeaway from what that was about? Are Jeff and I even close? And then let's engage some folks in the conversation here.
Great. Well, thank you, Bill. And hi, everybody. Good to see this great crew here this afternoon. Yes, I was a part. I can't believe it was 9 hours. It doesn't feel like it was 9 hours that we spent talking about customer revolution. But my take, very similar, I think, to you, Bill and Jeff, was that we are in this place where so many companies say we're customer focused. Customers are the most important thing to us, and it's in the values, and it's everywhere. And yet they really are operating in those silos, with each group really focused on their own objectives. And somewhere along the way, the customer, that was the genesis of starting the company, wanting to solve a problem that a founder knew many people had, whether you're Salesforce and you've been doing it for 30 years or you're a brand new startup, there's this germ of an idea. You want to solve a problem for someone, and it's so amazing, and companies focus on it. And then as they grow, somehow they lose that connectivity to that customer. They lose that mission that was all about solving the customer's problem and helping them to be as successful as possible, and they get really heads down about their own objectives. And so I think that what we were able to spend some time talking about is, why does that happen, and how can we recapture that focus on the customer that gets lost as a company grows. And I think one of the things we really stumbled upon is that people probably most of the people here on this call can be really important to that, because you are in a role where you are learning a whole lot. You're connected to almost every other part of the company, and you can become a key player in helping the organizations you work for recapture some of that customer centricity and love that they claim to have and maybe aren't quite fulfilling to the level they should be.
Carol, I just want to share, there was one arresting moment during the roundtables when we were trying to diagnose why these dysfunctions start creeping in as a business scales, and we're trying to come up with all these analytical reasons. I remember Nick and I were coming up with these very analytical approaches to it. And you said, excuse me, what happens is that you lose the soul of the business. And that led to some of the richest conversation that we had. I mean, Carol's genius is that she's very techy. She's very much into artificial intelligence and data analytics and so forth. But she also speaks human and thinks human. So that's, I just wanted to recognize you for that contribution. Let's see, we've got a comment here from Erwin. Erwin, how you doing, man? You are right. Every company says they are customer focused. As a customer advocacy pro, how do you tell an exec that it's not really that their child is ugly?
Let's start with like get to the heart of the matter. It is hard to just say, we say we're customer focused, but we're really not. And I think that might be something you can ease your way into because I think a lot of CEOs think they are customer focused, and they think they are because they stand up every quarter and they say, one of our values is we're customer focused. And I know one of the things I talk to Bill and Jeff a lot about is also that sometimes becomes what I call the hero mentality, where maybe not the people in your role, but maybe the people in the customer success role get called out for doing very heroic things to save a customer, or to stop a customer from saying negative things on social media or something like that. And that's sort of dragged out as being customer centric, that Amit saved this customer, it was amazing. And ultimately, that's really sending the wrong message to the company, as opposed to calling out, great triumphs you may have had in your role of getting customers to fix a problem overall. People are getting called out for heroically stopping a problem. And the problem they're stopping is probably indicative of the fact that you're not as customer focused as you think you are. Everyone has a few little problems now and then, but often what we see with customers, especially or organizations, especially when you start to get into the hero mentality, is that there are systemic problems, and that rather than addressing the systemic problems, every customer is treated as a one-off, and it's a heroic effort when you save them. And so, I think going back to what Bill was saying about these stories is it probably takes time to build up to the CEO getting the message that maybe the company isn't as customer centric as it could be. But I think you're in a position where you can start to connect things you're hearing from your customers, programs that you're putting in place that connect to other objectives that are very measurable for the CEO. And once you start being able to do that, that'll probably start to open that door to have some more substantive conversations about how the organization might be able to live up to and improve on its customer centricity to really bring yourself to the next level. But I think if you can sort of show what you're doing and how it connects to those objectives that Bill was talking about, kind of opens that door to have the other conversations. I think until that happens, sometimes CEOs are kind of like, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. Right. And, so once you've done that, you have a little more leeway to slip a few problems in there.
And I was just going to picking up right where you just left off, Carol. I just wanted to pipe in too, to your point about bring them solutions. Yeah, don't tell them that their child is ugly, right? Instead, start to bring them ideas for how we can be more customer centric. And one of the themes that came up that we spent a lot of time talking about during the roundtable was this idea of co-creation, with customers, right? And one of the observations I think Nick might have made was that co-creation is really a myth. You know, it doesn't really happen. I mean, doing a Net Promoter Score survey once a year is not co-creation. And so, Karen Steele actually made a good point. I mean, we're in such a hurry as companies to get product out the door that we don't want customer input, because that's going to slow down the process. So what we do is we run a beta test and when we're launching the product, and promise that we'll incorporate that feedback into the product. And so if you start to think about that, you know, to Erwin's question there, I mean, I would start to bring new ideas to say, you say you want to be, I'm excited, Mr. CEO or CXO, that you want to be customer-led, customer-driven, customer-centric. But here's some things that a lot of other companies are doing that we're not. Like, co-creation really means maybe there's a huge customer satisfaction issue or a flaw in your touch point of your customer journey somewhere, that you bring a panel of customers together to say, let's figure out how we improve that, right? From their perspective, right up front. Or even before we even launch that product, maybe we're bringing a bunch of customers together to say, how big is this problem? We have an idea about this problem. We've heard you talk about it. How big is it? And how have you envisioned solving it? And here's some ideas we have, before you even write the first line of code. Those are the types of things that companies that truly are customer centric are doing. And I do believe that customer marketers are in the driver's seat to lead some of those initiatives, because one of the other points that the C-level executives made is that they want customer marketing to be driving and creating a system of record for customer voice and feedback. And because right now it's so separated and it's in silos. If it does exist, if you're lucky enough that it does exist, that there is customer voice, it's in silos in different pockets of your company for different tactical needs. But nobody's really bringing it together and trying to take a more holistic view and then figuring out how to push that through the rest of the organization. And so that's also another opportunity for customer marketers to step up.
Absolutely.
Howard Fields has weighed in to corroborate Carol. He says, his way he puts it, the toughest thing for a new staff person to learn is that the diving catch is the term he uses. While important in field sales, is something staff should be working to avoid, to your point. And then Mike Jeffs has a question for you. What's your view of the career outlook for customer marketing? Can we, under what scenarios can we ascend and transition to a CMO role?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that you can move from what you're doing to almost any role you want. So that might not sound like an answer, but I'll talk a little bit about how you might think about doing that. And the reason I say that is I started my career in finance and I was actually an auditor. And I ended up being a VP of sales and then a chief marketing officer. And I think the trick to taking a customer marketing role and parlaying that into a CMO or whatever it is that you want to do is really immersing yourself in the business, understanding the business, understanding, you've got an understanding of your customers, which by the way is the hugest place to start, right? And then you want to really understand your business. You want to understand what drives it, how it makes money. You want to, when you're engaging with other people, another key advantage you have as a customer marketing person is you're probably engaging with sales, you're engaging with marketing, you're engaging with customer success, you're engaging with the product. The finance people probably want to talk to you now and then. And you can develop relationships with the people in those functions and ask them about what they do and why are they doing it and how do they do this and how do they do that. And all of that accumulated knowledge is what is going to help you get your next role, because that's going to help you position yourself for whatever it is you want to do next, right? So you're accumulating this knowledge, you're understanding the business. You want to move in deeper into marketing, you've got a great base. You've got something no one else does. You understand the business and you deeply understand the customer. Nothing better than that for moving into marketing roles. And I think, that's something you really want to focus on. And then you have to declare what you want. And you have to make sure whoever you are working for knows what you're after and is in your corner and is helping create opportunities for you to get that visibility. And go grab a cup of coffee with your CMO and tell them, hey, I want to be you someday. What are the things you think I need to be doing and paying attention? What skills do you want me to acquire? And now you've got someone in your corner who might just think of you for the next and tap you for the next role that opens up in marketing, because they're going to really value that customer insight that you bring. So critical to the marketing function.
And if I could just add there. Okay, no, go ahead, Bill. I had something I wanted to add there too, but go ahead.
Get all excited here.
Yeah.
What I would add to that is this. I mean, what better position to come from than from a customer marketing position? Right. And then secondly, what we're trying to help you with here is really the next step in that progression. This isn't just about getting CXO buy-in or support. This is about getting on a path to CXO yourself. And what better way to do that than to unleash this potential of your customers to help grow the business and to start dealing with these dysfunctions that CXOs are very aware of in the current regime they have to achieve these big, tough objectives. The dysfunction that we talked about earlier, that you've got the solution for this. What better way to become known as somebody who can do that and start realizing that vision? I mean, the thing that customers want as much, and this is something Nick said also, he had everybody had remarkable comments, but Nick made the observation at one point. He said, the thing that I get requested most from customers, what customers want the most is to connect with other customers. It's the easiest sale you'll ever have. And it can do so many things for your business. And that's what you guys own. Can't think of a better road, a better path to the C-suite. Jeff?
Yeah. What I was just going to add is that think about the different folks in marketing that might be competing to rise up to the CMO role. Demand gen, obviously, they tend to be, they own the funnel, right? So they tend to be very funnel focused and metrics. So they tend to know the business from that perspective, but too often they don't know the customer, right? And so the customer marketing folks know the customer way better, but what the customer marketing folks oftentimes aren't as close to sales from an actual understanding what happens throughout the sales cycle. They understand it from a reference perspective and usage of case study perspective, but not necessarily knowing what are the biggest objections and challenges that sales reps are running into, because that tends to be more the sales enablement people. And so again, those are some of the areas where you need to round out to have just as much a chance as a demand gen person or somebody who's doing a sales enablement role to move up to the CMO level role.
Yeah.
And with that, I wanted to just pose a question to Carol. Carol, somebody that you know very well, Evan Jacobs. He posed a question here that I would like to expand on. So he's asking, how would you suggest attaching to some of the CXO objectives if you don't own them, i.e. you need to influence them, right? Which I think ties into sort of the bigger question I'd like you to take on is, how do we start talking the language of these executives, right? Because first, in order to start attaching yourself to some of those objectives, you need to be talking their language. And what are your thoughts with that?
Yeah. Hi, Evan. So glad you're here. Yeah. So I was gonna give you tons of examples about Evan, which, by the way, if you want to talk about somebody who built an amazing program, he certainly did at Rapid7. And trying to connect sometimes to the big objectives can be challenging. But the truth is, I had this discussion with someone this morning, other than the CEO and maybe the C-suite, nobody owns those objectives. Right. You might say, well, the CRO owns revenue. They're measured on revenue, but the CRO can't do their job and hit their revenue objectives without the product team developing a good product, without the marketing team doing a good job, without the customer support team helping make sure customers are successful, because word gets around, in a market pretty quickly, which is going to make the CRO's job really hard. So I try to remind people that hitting those objectives, it sounds like, oh, that's so crazy, but it really is everybody's job. And so it's sitting down and thinking about what are the things that I am doing and how are they influencing the company's ability to achieve the goals that we want to. You know, Evan and I used to talk about the 3 R's of, so I think sometimes we called them revenue, referral, and renewal, and sometimes we called them referral, renewal, and ROI. But the whole idea was those things that we are doing, how do they tie to revenue? Well, for example, Evan built an amazing program where he interviewed customers. And I saw a lot about interviewing customers in here. It's really great and important to do. But it wasn't just about what do you like or don't like about our products. It was really about them and their role and their business and what made their job hard or easy. And it was with our product team, and it helped our product team innovate because they would learn things. You know, they'd hear a pattern across a bunch of customers. They're like, we could build that into our software and solve those problems for our customer. Now there, if we can show that connective tissue between what we learned from our customers and the product we built, that's a sure path to revenue. Right now, we have something new to take to the market to win new customers and something we can bring to our existing customers to solve a problem that we know they all have and that they're going to want to buy. And so I think it can be really hard sometimes. It can take time. Your best friend might be a great analyst in your BI team who can help you figure out, maybe you can't show causation, but maybe you can show correlation. And you can back up the data with the stories, because nothing resonates better with your C-suite. They do love data, just like anybody else, backed up with a story of a couple customers you spoke to, and you can show how it all worked and how they ultimately bought or told 10 other people that they should buy your software. Like light bulbs go off and they bring your statistics to life, I think.
So maybe related to that, that's a good segue into this concept of customer fluency that you guys practice at Rapid7. Maybe, should we put Evan on the spot? Evan, you want to tell us a little bit about what customer fluency meant to you and how you practiced it?
Sure. Thanks, Carol, and hey, everyone. So I think it came down to the relationship, but also sort of those hallway stories, right? So I think it was about, do you have or can you equip the teams with those hallway stories that they could repeat wherever they are in their own language of, hey, did you know that this customer, their name, they used us this way, and it was how they progressed their program, grew their career, you know, achieved their goals in ways that people could relate to. And every company has a handful of those, but you want to just be developing those on the fly. And ultimately over time, especially if you're somewhere for a bit, your sales team or your revenue org will actually come to you and say, hey, who do you got? Who do you know? And it's just, I think it's off the cuff that you can have that information, not necessarily, oh, it's logged in some repository somewhere, but it's that you can just, the fluency part is it's off the tip of your tongue. You could just talk about it in a very comfortable way in your own language. So I think that was what Carol and I were kind of chatting about.
And so that's how you gain the fluency, right? And how do you start? Because what the C-level executives want is for the customer marketing folks to help develop more customer fluency across the organization, because you guys have the keys to the kingdom, right? I mean, you know those customer stories. You know more than just the challenge, solution, result. You know the emotion, the pain, the suffering, the trials and tribulations that customers went through, and as well the tremendous value that they're getting. I wanted to open up again to Carol, Bill, or anybody else on the line if you have any thoughts on that C-level desire to infuse their company with more customer fluency across the whole organization.
Yeah, I mean, that was also a key part of what the customer marketing program did was, one, find ways to share those stories via, emails, case studies, talking at sales enablement events or marketing events, but also very often bringing customers in to address our own teams so that the teams themselves could hear some of these stories. We would typically do that at sales kickoffs. We would bring customers in, like if they were in town for something, to address the marketing team, and the marketing team could actually ask them questions about, how do you make buying decisions? What is it like to do your job? And just to really get to understand customers a lot better and have everyone feel a little bit more connected. to them. And I think, this kind of gets a little bit to, I see my other friend, Christine Hess here, who asked about cabs kind of being the hammer to the nail to this thing, like cabs are used for everything, customer fluency, you name it. We're going to put together a cab and it's going to solve everything. But, and I don't think they do solve everything. I've seen them be good and I've seen them be not so great. But I think this idea of exposing your organization to customers to come in and talk, I think, I've seen customers share community with each other online. And another really great thing that Evan and his team did was, as customers joined our community and they were references for us or did speaking engagements or whatever else it might be, and other things, there was a give to them, like, hey, if you've got a problem, we'll reach out to others in the Rapid7 network and we'll see if there's someone who can talk through how they solve that problem for you, and helping to actually make those connections for customers who might say, I could really use some peer support on this. And I think, thinking about not just what you're getting, but always what can I give back really helps make some of those connections for people. And I think, Bill, you have a great story about the in Canada, how for SaaS, yeah. And I think that's a form of customer connection, right? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, I remember you especially love that story, and it's one I've told frequently to my community. But what's important here is that this resonates with people like Carol, and it's a story of when SaaS Canada was suffering from a rapid decline in customer retention rates, enough that it had the president. This was SaaS Canada, the division president was directly involved in this. They were planning a big, expensive marketing campaign, the usual thing. And so someone like yourselves, the customer advocacy manager at SaaS Canada, said, I think our customer champions can help us with this. And actually, at the moment that he offered this, he didn't have customer champions formally, but he had an idea of who they could be. So he starts recruiting these customers. There was about 50 of them. And they went to extraordinary lengths to solve this problem. They put on 20 events in 13 cities. They called them forums. They attracted 2,000 people. They contributed to a newsletter that was started that eventually got 5,000 subscribers, so forth and so on. Retention rates restored. And if I could just weigh in what Carol has been saying here, this customer fluency, I love that. That's the sort of a human approach to customers that nobody else has, like you all do. And if you can become expert at bringing what Carol and Jeff have been talking about, and Evan, I think, I've been talking about, is actually bringing live human being customers into the company and to your product people, to your support people, and so forth, to tell their stories and to tell what their day is like. That will put you. Data analytics is important. Artificial intelligence is important. No question about it. There's going to be lots of people doing that stuff. These relationships, I think, will be rare. The ability to develop these kinds of relationships that can develop that kind of impact. And just one more thought on this. We're overcomplicating the way we do business. I mean, go back to Mark Benioff's solution to drive business through his events. Get rid of all the fluff. We don't need sales pitches. We don't need a bunch of our marketing stuff and so forth and so on. We don't need to stress this. We just need to get really good at putting customers together with other customers. And if you go back to the flywheel we came up with, and also customers together with our key employees and customers with the customer experience. And that's really what it takes in this world and in this age to grow a business. That's it. I think you can make that case.
Just a time check here. I know we're getting towards the top of the hour. I want to remind people that I mean, what we're talking about here, like we've laid down the gauntlet, right? That you need to connect to these strategic growth initiatives, but it's way harder than even the examples that we've given. We know that, and that's why we want to find out from you, how else can we help? Bill, myself, the other people that were on the roundtable, like Carol, the CustomerX community. So feel free to put into the chat or follow up with any of us afterwards. I'm Jeff at slapfive.com, but we want to hear from you as to whether you want to see more sessions like this. Do you want to see more of a structured workshop where we put people in the hot seat and take types of initiatives they want to connect to, and kind of have a group think on how you could do that? Is it one-on-one coaching? Just let us know how else, because we recognize getting from here to there is not easy, and it's going to take a lot of new muscle memory and ways of thinking and ways of behaving and acting, as well as ways of exerting influence that we may not have had to do before. So I know maybe we have a time for 2 more minutes or so. Howard just teed up a nice point, I think, which is related to the pandemic. And how has the pandemic impacted customer relationships? Stronger, weaker? Has it changed customers' willingness to engage? Let me just make one point, and then I want to have Carol pipe into this. But it did come up that one of the points that was made is that COVID, in a lot of ways, has brought us back to basics and made some of the basic relationships even more important now, and put in even more focus. I observed, and people confirmed in the roundtable, that in the early part of COVID, maybe a year when we were starting to go through the shock of the shutdowns and worried about how long it's going to be, and there was a lot of panic, a lot of companies said, oh, we have to do an all-out customer relationship blitz to protect our customers from leaving because we don't know how long this is going to be. But now I think the more insightful executives are realizing this is actually a turning point in terms of the relationships that customers are expecting. They want to get closer to the company and your employees, and they want to get closer to each other. And so that was another thing too, that the executives didn't have a lot of answers for it, but they really want their customer marketers to find more ways to bring customers together, and not just in cabs and user groups, but also in things like mentor programs. I think that's another thing you did at Rapid7, right? So whether or small group birds of a feather sessions or things like that are beyond just the big customer events and cabs and things like that. So anyway, yeah, so I was teeing up the subject of COVID. Anybody else want to give any feedback or insights on the impact of COVID on customer relationships and customer engagement moving forward?
Well, I was going to say, I was writing an answer to you, Howard. I didn't see anything that major. I mean, other than, yeah, Jeff, I saw everybody flurry around like saying, hey, we're not going to charge you, if you're in hardship mode, we won't, right. We'll delay your payment and your renewal and all of that. But I did see some companies really, and maybe it's overused, but really embrace the virtual thing to help make connections. They did one of the companies I worked with called ChargeBee, I'll give a shout out to them, sort of had this whole initiative around champions of change and feeling like everyone is feeling like change is being thrust upon me and I also need change. And they brought together small groups of CFOs, and they could do it across the world because now they didn't have to be, able to get together live. They did a series of other things where they gave their customers a chance to talk about how they were dealing with various changes and to let future customers and current customers engage and talk about, yeah, I have the same problem. How do I do that? And so they really put a lot of effort into helping customers connect with each other, making it open to prospects, but it wasn't just about getting prospects, it was about how do we help our customers be more successful and help each other through this tough time. And I think it's been phenomenal for them.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Why don't we, I know we're at the top of the hour. Why don't we wrap up here? Bill, I don't know if unless you have any other closing statements, I just personally wanted to thank everybody for joining us and having an interest in elevating your game. That's so encouraging because that's the mission and charter of the CustomerX Pros community, is to elevate our game by connecting ourselves to those strategic growth initiatives. So again, if anybody has any more thoughts, please note them of what you want to see moving forward. Note them in the chat or reach out to us directly. Bill, I'll let you wrap up as well.
I echo. I want to thank folks who attended this and are interested in upping your game. That's always inspiring as well. I'm interested in getting your feedback also on what you think of this concept, what you think of this idea of going directly to your C-suites and not like bringing problems to them or not trying to pitch your customer marketing program to them, but you're going to them and saying, what's the biggest problem you're facing? Actually, you should find that out for us. You should go to them with that information and say, I think I've got a way to help you with this big challenge, this business objective that you're not getting the traction you. May I share my ideas with you? That's what we're talking about here. And I'm curious to what you think about that approach to doing your job. So feel free to write me, Bill at c4ce.com. You can find me on my website. Say something in the chat here. Love to hear from you. And my only other thing is, Carol, thank you again so much for all you've done. And here's another hour talking to one of our roundtable members. We have to chalk this up too.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for all the great questions.